Dartmouth's trolley car lines really began because of a problem, right here on this spot in New Bedford. This was the whaling city's first railroad station and was situated on Pearl Street. When it was built in 1840, this area was really on the edge of town, and folks had to either walk or hire a carriage to go downtown. By the 1870s, though, this situation became a big problem due to the amount of folks wanting to catch steamboats to the islands of Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket. The steamboat wharf, however, was a mile or so away at the foot of School Street, a very inconvenient situation. At the same time, the population of New Bedford was growing quickly. Both railroad and steamboat officials realized that they had to solve this transportation problem. Presently, after interesting other investors, the group formed the New Bedford and Fairhaven Street Railway, incorporating on February the 6th, 1872. Construction began right away and really moved quickly. By June 15th of 72, track was completed between the New Bedford and Taunton Railroad Depot and the Steamboat Wharf. July the 1st saw the opening of the line, with a fare priced at 6 cents. In the beginning, there were just two routes. The first ran from the Pearl Street Railroad Depot, shown in red on this map, to the Steamboat Wharf. The second route, shown in yellow, started at William and Purchase Streets and went over the Fairhaven Bridge to Bridge Street in Fairhaven, and on to the Fairhaven Branch Railroad Depot. The line needed a car house for its horse cars and for stabling the horses, so one was constructed on the east side of Purchase Street north of Pearl. This facility served the line throughout its early years. By the way, the horses' names are Pepper and Snowball. The first horse cars purchased were built by the Jones Company in West Troy, New York. 3 of this group were called bobtails. They were single-ended with a platform in front for the driver and single step in back for passengers to board or exit the car. The problem here was that a turntable was needed at the ends of the line in order to turn the cars around. The double-enders had no such problem, for at the end of the line, you merely unhitched your horses, walked them around to the other end, and hitched them back up. The horse car line began to make money and soon extended its tracks to accommodate an ever-increasing population. Suddenly, in early 1884, word got out that a new street railway company was in the works. This line took the name Acushnet Street Railway. Its 2 main promoters were Abbott P. Smith of New Bedford and Charles E. Cook of Dartmouth. This new company's tracks started at Lund's Corner, which is at Acushnet Avenue and Tarkin Hill Road, and ended up at Cove Road along Clark's Cove in the south end of town. The Acushnet Street Railway also constructed its own car barn at Bowditch and Weld Streets, shown here. The left side of the building accommodated the new company's offices, and the right side housed the horse cars. During this mid-1880s time period, both street railways, who were fierce rivals by the way, extended their tracks toward the Dartmouth border. The New Bedford and Fairhaven laid rails from Summer Street up Kempton to Jenny Street. The Acushnet Road laid rails up Dartmouth Street as far as Rural Cemetery. With such tight competition between the 2 companies, neither ended up making money. The year 1886 in particular was very hard. It became obvious that New Bedford could not support 2 separate systems. Merger talks began in 1887. On April the 30th, 1888, the separate roads became one, under the new name Union Street Railway, meaning the union of the 2 older lines. It is interesting to note that the merger of the two roads took place at about the same time that electricity as a motive power became practical. Soon, the Union Street Railway began considering the replacement of its horse cars with the newfangled trolley cars. Initially, though, when the street railway proposed using electricity to run trolley cars, there was a flurry of opposition, even from the mayor, who was a horse lover. People thought that trolleys would frighten the horses and that falling or broken wires would cause panic. The Union Street Railway finally decided to ask the city for permission to try an experiment. They wanted authority to electrify the Mount Pleasant Rural Cemetery route from the Mount Pleasant car barn shown here. After much debate, permission was finally granted on May the 16th, 1890, along with strict rules relating to construction. The street railway crews worked all through the summer and early fall of 1890 to get the line up and running. On Friday, October 17th, an experimental car was run over the Mount Pleasant line at night to check everything out. The following afternoon, car 47, a converted horse car, became the first trolley to run officially in New Bedford, and it was on the Mount Pleasant Rural Cemetery run, a beginning for the eventual line to Padenham. The electric cars proved an immediate success with the public. Everyone wanted to ride the trolley. In 1892, the Union Street Railway received permission to extend track from Rural Cemetery to the Dartmouth border at Rockdale Avenue next to the Red Store. This trackage was quickly completed by the end of September. During the next year, 1893, tracks were extended along Rockdale Avenue southeasterly to what was known as Howland Village. This, however, proved to be a short-lived line. The majority of trackage leading into Padenham Village was built in 1898, ending up on Elm Street opposite the New Bedford Yacht Club. At the same time, the Howland Village extension was pulled up. Saturday, July 30th, 1898, was a very special day for the residents of South Dartmouth. A formal opening of the line was held in the village. 3 special trolleys made the trip, and of course there were speeches aplenty. There was also the driving in of a final gilded spike by a Mr. Stephen Anthony. This took place in front of the Padenham Post Office on Elm Street. The rest of the day offered free rides for everyone. The line through to Elm Street in Padenham lasted until May 26, 1935. The Union Street Railway at that time found it necessary to cut back service to Bliss Corner. The reason given was that private cars had begun to take a toll on ridership. This resulted in still more cutbacks as time passed. The year 1939, in fact, saw the complete end of trolley service on the Padenham line. Let's take a look now at some interesting views of the Padenham line over the years, starting right here at Lawton's Corner, Union and Purchase Street in New Bedford. Here comes open car number 81 down Union Street, preparing to stop for passengers at the corner sometime in the early 1900s. Note the fashions of the day. Here we are on Elm Street in Padenham, not far from the end of the line. It must have been fun to ride the cars through the countryside on this nice spring day. With the coming of warmer weather, the trolley company would bring out their open cars. These cars were a delight to ride and were very popular. Here we see car 239 at the end of track on Elm Street. Each of these cars had both a motorman and conductor. Just as on the railroad, some wealthy people had the means to charter a private trolley car, which was always fitted out very elegantly. This car from the Old Colony Street Railway visited Padenham each summer for several years, bringing a family down to South Dartmouth in style. The early open cars were indeed a sight to behold. Car 82, seen here, is on Dartmouth Street at the corner of Rockdale Avenue, heading up to South Dartmouth. She has only 4 wheels and a huge fender to catch a careless person on the tracks so they won't get caught beneath the car. The date is June 11th, 1934. Car 405 has just started up Dartmouth Street at Doyle Square on its way towards Paidnaram. These cars were a semi-convertible car in that the windows could be lowered way down to give an airy ride, like that on an open car. Here we see car 403 cruising along Dartmouth Street not far from Bliss Corner. Waiting at Bliss Corner is car 403 set to return to downtown New Bedford. This was the end of the Paidnaram line after May 26, 1935. Lastly, here's a parting view of a Bliss Corner car just starting up Dartmouth Street in New Bedford on its way to South Dartmouth. Let's now move a bit north in Dartmouth to the town's other trolley line. This route was much longer and has a far more lengthy history. A glance at the map showing the route in red allows one to see that the tracks connected New Bedford to Fall River with a right-of-way along Route 6. The center island along the road today is where the double track formerly ran. This new independent line received its charter in early March of 1893 and was named the Dartmouth and Westport Street Railway. It connected with the Union Street Railway at Kempton Street in New Bedford and with the Globe Street Railway at the Narrows, Watuppa Pond, at the Fall River border. Construction of the line moved right along, and, though opened in sections, on July the 1st, 1894, the line was completed between the two cities. Car number 6 here was the first car over the entire line. This view is at the Stafford Road car barn in Fall River. Since the Dartmouth and Westport didn't have any car barns of its own, the company used facilities provided by both the Globe Street Railway in Fall River and Union Street Railway in New Bedford. Here are pictured 2 cars at the Mount Pleasant car barn in New Bedford at Durfee and Mount Pleasant Streets. The year 1894 is also important for another reason relating to the trolley line. The company purchased a large pine grove near the Dartmouth and Westport town line, right near Westport Factory Village. This park was named Lincoln Park and proved to be very popular for many decades. This facility indeed has a very lively history of its own. The Dartmouth and Westport trolleys became very popular right away, so the company actually made money right from the onset of service. With such heavy patronage, the company soon found that their single-track line was totally inadequate. They quickly decided to lay a second track alongside the original rails, which were on the side of the road. This was in the early first decade of the 20th century. Here we can see the new double track in place toward the south side of what is now Route 6 at Smith Mills. Note the dirt road. We are looking easterly at Smith Mills, corner of Fonts Corner Road. The tracks are on the right, and a wide carriage road is on the left in this scene. The rails are really distinct in this view of the Smith Mills area. One can pick out the Friends Meeting House on the right and homes at the corner of Tucker Road. The newly double-tracked road proved to be a big improvement, and the line worked quite well. However, in 1925, the state began changing Route 6 to a 4-lane divided highway. As a result, the double-track system had to be changed to a center private right-of-way between the easterly and westerly lanes of auto traffic. For the most part, this center island is still intact to this day, though it has narrowed some. Westport Factory Village had a little different trackage situation in that the trolleys had to go over a long wooden trestle bridge that spanned the westerly edge of Lake Nokichoke. The carriage road made an almost 90-degree turn at this point, but the trolley bridge cut across the waterway at an angle. Later, the bridge work was changed so that both road and tracks were separated so that there were no longer problems with rights-of-way or bad collisions. The 1925 highway change modified the area still further, as did the change of bridge to causeway in 1937. Returning to Smith Mills for a moment, those of you that live in the area might find it interesting to know what happened on the first day of service to the village. It was Saturday, July the 1st, 1893. 4 newly painted open cars with officials from both New Bedford and Dartmouth were aboard, plus other invited guests and the musical exchange band. This group really provided a festive air to the event. When the cars arrived at Smith Mills, they were met by a large group of villagers. Mr. Joe Bess Gidley welcomed the visitors with a speech. The trolley line provided food for all, and then any folks that wished to could ride the cars back to New Bedford for free. In addition to the Dartmouth and Westport Street Railway's regular 4-wheeled closed and open cars, the line also sported what was called a director's car for the line's officials to use on company business. It was built in 1895 by the Jackson and Sharp Company and served the road as needed while it was still independent. Up to 1896, the company used just 4-wheeled trolley cars. Management began to rethink that situation, and in the summer of '96 purchased a 13-bench, 8-wheeled open car that had seating for up to 65 passengers. This move was a complete success from the beginning and resulted in the purchase of several more larger cars in the succeeding years. To illustrate, here's 5 opens lined up for a large crowd at Lincoln Park. Seen here is an example of the large closed cars that the company bought. Number 295 is cruising into Smith Mills in this view, bound for the Narrows at Fall River. Financially, the Dartmouth and Westport was doing exceptionally well and really was heavily influenced by the Union Street Railway management. As one might expect, eventually thoughts turned to consolidating the 2 roads. This finally happened on November the 1st, 1910. The D&W then became the Dartmouth and Westport Division of the Union Street Railway. The speed of the trolleys on the Dartmouth and Westport was always something that excited riders in one way or another. The line thusly developed a nickname. It was called the Gee Whiz Line. Now, there are 2 very different stories around about how the line got this label. One story says that the editor of the Fall River Herald gave it that label due to the trolley's fast speed. The other story that's been heard for years had to do with the women's hats of the day, the large, high, often wide-brimmed variety. Imagine sitting in an open car racing along the private right-of-way and then down the hill from Slocum Road into Smith Mills. The hats didn't stand a chance. Gee whiz! The Dartmouth and Westport Division continued to do well for a number of years. However, automobiles, and later buses, began to take their toll on ridership. It came to the point where the Union Street Railway ended service to Fall River on September the 30th, 1933. In this scene are the last 2 cars meeting at the Narrows that day. Service was cut back to Forge Road near Lincoln Park. One might think that the trolley line just cut back service without a fight. That's not so, however. To hopefully attract more riders on the Fall River run, 4 cars were upgraded to deluxe cars in 1927, but the inevitable was only delayed. Refurbished car number 295, seen here, is approaching Rockdale Avenue in New Bedford, heading east on Kempton Street. Here's what she looked like on the inside, with fine leather seats and even curtains in the windows. The remaining years of the 1930s rolled along with the trolleys carrying passengers to and from Lincoln Park and along to other stops on Route 6. It wasn't long until a big upsurge in ridership occurred with the United States' entry in World War II. Trolleys, through necessity, again became the way to travel, and the 400 series cars in particular provided great service on the Lincoln Park line. On occasion, other Union Street Railway trolleys took a run through to the park during the war years. Here's car 602, which usually ran on the Luntz Corner Fort Rodman line down at the end of track at Lincoln Park. When World War II ended in September of 1945, government restrictions also began to end. Soon, the Union Street Railway again took up its plan to change all lines over to buses. The last trolleys to Lincoln Park ran on Sunday, April 28, 1946. New Bedford's last cars ran on Sunday, May 3, 1947, and our area's trolleys sadly passed into history. Over the years, it's often been asked by interested individuals why the open cars stopped running on the Lincoln Park line back in the late 1930s. The answer that the company gave was that the 1938 hurricane flooded out the Pope's Island car barn shown here. Since this was where most of the open cars were housed, the traction motors on the cars were ruined by salt water, and that ended their days in service. Another question that some ask is, what happened to the wooden car barn at Lincoln Park near the parking lot? Well, that building mysteriously caught fire in recent years, and that was that. Transporting the public was, of course, the principal mission of the Union Street Railway. Therefore, the passenger trolleys are what most people remember. However, there were also a variety of service cars. These interesting cars including trolleys, like the flat car seen here at Pope's Island Car Barn. There was also Line Car 47 that was used to maintain the overhead trolley wire. In the wintertime, there were snow plows to clear the tracks. Here's a shot of Plow S19 removing snow along the Lincoln Park route not far from the Sandpit turnout. This was in February of 1940. The street railway also had electric express cars, a kind of trolley freight service. On the Dartmouth and Westport line, this service began on March the 9th, 1903, and business grew rapidly. A freight station was jointly built by the Dartmouth and Westport and New Bedford and Onset roads and opened in August of 1909. It was situated on the east side of Water Street at the corner of Elm. If you went to the large door on the left, this is what the interior looked like. Here's car 304 waiting at Lincoln Park while conducting a bit of business in the background. The same car is busy here in Mattapoisett on the New Bedford and Onset lines sometime around 1914. This interesting view was taken at the Marion Depot on the New Bedford and Onset line. Note the delivery wagon is also labeled Electric Express. The June 1914 timetable illustrates how far-reaching this express service was in the early years of the 20th century. It ran to Boston, Providence, New Bedford, Newport, Onset, and towns in between, wherever the trolley tracks went. Freight service continued to serve the region through the teen years of the 20th century. Trucks and railway abandonments, however, began to take their toll. Finally, in late 1921, the Union Street Railway notified all concerned that trolley freight service would end on November the 21st of that year. Now, the express cars were about to take on a new life. The Union Street Railway management decided to convert the now unused express cars to snowplows of one design or another, or sand scraper cars. These cars ended their days in this capacity until the end of trolley service around the whaling city in 1947. Our local trolley lines also provided mail service to the post offices for a number of years. It began with the Dartmouth and Westport Street Railway in 1896, when closed mail bags were carried on regular passenger runs. A few years later, in 1899, the Union Street Railway started delivering mail pouches to the Peyton Post Office. Notice the words U.S. Mail on the end seat of the left-hand car. In 1906, the company provided regular post office cars just for mail delivery. Each car had a motorman, conductor, and mail clerk. The earliest cars were all four-wheel trolleys like number 34 here posing in front of the New Bedford Post Office on William Street. Another of the company's mail cars, number 36, is seen here on 2nd Street near the corner of William. There was also a larger mail car, number 302. After serving an express service, it was altered for mail car use sometime in 1924. It appears that mail car service finally ended in the late 1920s. There are still some people and mementos around relating to the local trolley lines. The most important source for a look back are the folks that indeed ran the cars. We here in Dartmouth are especially lucky in this regard, for we were able to arrange for a private interview with just such a town resident. Hello, my name is Paul Vassar, and I'm here at DCTV with a former motorman, Stephen Howland of Dartmouth. And we're going to kind of talk about trolleys today and his reminiscences of the times when the Union Street Railway was running trolleys through the town of Dartmouth. Mr. Howland, when did you first go to work for the Union Street Railway?
After I come out of World War II, July of 1946.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the street railway was kind of winding down then as far as running trolleys go.
Yeah, but I did drive them, well, off and on, 9 months.
9 months?
9 months I drove off and on. I'm not steady.
Right.
Because I was a spare boy driving, and sometimes I'd have a bus, sometimes I'd have a trolley. Because I'd fill in your job or my job.
Yeah. So you had quite a variety at that point.
Yes, I was.
Why did you choose to work for the Union Street Railway anyway?
After I come out of World War II, I was just a kid with nothing to do. And my brother worked in the bus garage, he was a mechanic. And I says, you know the boss that hires people? He says, yeah. I says, I'll ask you if I can come and make out an application and get me hired. So he did. And I got a month, well, I got it right away. I got an application to go and make out a report, you know. And then, and 4 months later, I got a letter in the mail to come to work to July the 1st.
Oh, was that right? From Elton Weil?
Yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Anyway.
After my report and things, then he sent me a letter. If you still want to work, report July the 1st, 46.
Hey, that was good. Which car lines did you run the trolleys on anyway?
Well, the only one they had was Fort Rodman to Lungs Corner. That's
By
all
then,
the rest had gone.
Yeah.
All the rest had gone.
Yeah, they were all going into buses.
Yeah, all gone to buses.
I well remember that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. Now, the Union Street Railway had several very interesting designs of trolleys. You had the 400s, 500s, the 600s. Then you had, of course, the earlier yellow bellies, the 1s and 200s that had that yellow strip there along the sides. Which ones did you like the best?
I didn't drive too many yellow bellies. We call them yellow bellies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the way we remember them too.
I only drove it once or twice, and that was taken from the Wells Street car barn over to Pope's Island and parked it away in the garage.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course, the 400s and the 500s, you sit on a stool with a chain from the front. The stool will wriggle back and forth, and they was all right. I liked them. Of course, the 600s had a regular seat, and just always sat down to drive.
Yeah, it swiveled, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
It was almost like a bucket seat, wasn't it?
They didn't swivel, they just turned around.
Yeah.
They didn't swivel. The ones hanging on a chain, they shriggled back and forth.
Yeah.
There was the 400s and the 500s.
I can remember those on the Lincoln Park line, actually. Those
They took
400s.
They took that off 1 month before I come.
Oh, is that right? The Lincoln Park line?
Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, they took them off in June. I don't know what just the exact date,
Yeah.
but they took it off the 1st of June. And I come the 1st of July.
Now, before you went to work for the company, I assume you rode the trolleys anyway, right?
Oh, yes.
So, do you have any particular memories of the paid Narrow line at all? That was a pretty line, actually,
was pretty
running
nice.
down to the
Yeah.
village.
Yeah, well, yeah, I remember 'em. They used to come up Elm Street and then up Prospect Street, then up Dartmouth Street.
Yeah, all the way into town.
All the way
into town. How about the same thing on the Lincoln Park line? Lincoln Park line was a very interesting line to ride. I remember that.
But I didn't ride that much because I never went that way. I was always stayed down South Dartmouth.
Oh, is that right? Now, back a ways, I know they use the open cars on the Lincoln Park line, and I guess they use them on the paid narrow line too.
Oh, yes.
I'm sure. Do you have any particular memories of the open cars as a kid growing up around here?
You could get on in the middle of the trolley because the step all the way along. You stepped on the side. Then
Yeah. Now, I remember having one elderly person one time tell me about the Lincoln Park line with the open cars. Now, this is prior to the 1938 hurricane, because after that, they were stored over at Pope's Island, and the water came up and it ruined all the motors in those, so they couldn't use them again after the 38 hurricane. But they remembered riding the open cars on the Lincoln Park line, and the women in those days used to wear some big hats, great big hats. And of course, riding the open cars, those big hats would tend to want to move. Well, the Lincoln Park line got a nickname because of that. And you know what they called it? This came from the women. This was called the Gee Whiz line, because gee whiz, the hat's going, which was rather an interesting thing. Was it more fun for you to run the trolleys or the buses? What do you think?
Well, I enjoyed the trolleys. I enjoyed them when I drove them. And of course, I only drove them when somebody else was out.
So you actually got a taste of both at the same time.
That's right.
Really, in that changeover time.
I said I was a young kid, young fellow. I was going on 20s. Going on 26.
Yeah, because the cars, the last day the car, no, when they changed over, it was May 3rd, 1947. That was the day they changed.
Oh, May 30th?
Yeah, 3rd. May 3rd. I remember that. That was a Sunday, and I remember it well because I complained to my aunt that there were no cars running on the once called a Fort Rodman line. There were only buses, and I couldn't understand. Why are there only buses? Where are the streetcars? And she said, well, they're trying an experiment. She wouldn't tell me exactly what was happening. Anyway, do you have any memories at all of the car barn at Lincoln Park? Because that was a long wooden building.
Yeah, I know. I saw it many times, but I never was in it, no.
No, they kept a spare car there. I guess it was the morning car, the first car out from the park. And I never got a chance to see that either, but I know the building lasted up until recently, until it burned.
Burnt up.
So there's not anything left there at all now. Now, the Union Street Railway had, off the main line here on the Lincoln Park line, they had a spur which ran down into the sand pit where they used to get sand for the cars for braking. Do you have any recollection of that? Because that is something very few people know about.
No, I never. No, I don't know nothing about that.
You never ran the sand car to go and pick up sand then, did you?
No, I was on a snowplow 2 nights.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, but had another man driving.
Uh-huh.
And there was 2 boys, we used to put sand down the funnel on the track. Mm-hmm. We used to have a sprinkle had a big funnel, and it went down on the track. Mm-hmm. But I never did drive the snowplow.
Were you ever in any big storms with the snowplow?
Oh yeah, they pushed the snow out. They pushed the snow.
I know they did a good job.
Oh yeah, they plowed the snow, and then they had a thing on the side of the snowplow about that high off the ground. So when the first one plowed it out, it's come up only here, see?
Yeah.
And it had another one on the side of the wing, and we used to put it out.
That's right.
And then take all the top off.
That's what they were called too, the wings.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of those snowplows that we had here on the Interstate Railway were built right here in Taunton by the Taunton Locomotive Works. Rather interesting, actually. Okay. Now, can you tell us what happened to nearly all of the trolley cars at the end? After trolleys were abandoned, what did the Union Street Railway do with them?
The 600s, they sold them, get rid of them, sold them.
The Queensboro Bridge
they went.
Street Railway took them for some of them.
Some went down to New York.
I know that a few of the service cars and the horse car went to Street Railway museums, either in Connecticut or up in Maine.
Well, I saw the 2 in Maine, because I've been up there.
Yeah, I have too. I've seen those.
I've been up to Maine. You know, I was up to Maine one day, and I said to the girl, I want to take a ride on the trolley car. I said, you know, I used to drive them things. And I says, I got pictures of them too, of me driving them. She says, well, if you drove the trolley cars, you don't have to pay. Well, I give you the ticket.
That was really very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the girl, she gave me the ticket, but I bought one for my wife. My wife was with me.
Yes.
And I bought the ticket for her. We rode the trolley down through the woods back.
Yeah.
So like a mile down the back.
That main museum is, I think, one of the very oldest in the country that deal with street railways anyway.
Yeah.
They've got a good facility up there, really.
Oh, good. It's a beautiful place.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
They got stuff there, double-decker trolleys, double-deckers, and some is just sightseeing trolleys. They come from
those are from what, Montreal? Those
England or somewhere.
One from Montreal. Oh, the double deckers. Those come from England.
Yeah,
right.
There was 2 trolley cars that I remember. You got on down here, and they went up like that. So you sit in the back. You said we're high.
Those are the sightseeing ones from Montreal.
Oh, that one.
Yeah, those. I rode those in Montreal.
Oh, I never did.
What's your feeling about street railways today? In other words, the modern trolleys today, what kind of a future do you feel they have here in the United States?
I think if they had them and they could run them just certain places, like from New Bedford to Fall River, you say, I think they'd be better off than buses. I do. Mm-hmm. But
I tend to agree with you. I know that many cities within the United States are putting back their street railways or expanding their street railways.
Yeah.
And of course now when you have to consider gasoline prices and everything, I think it's probably going to look a little more attractive.
Yeah.
And we'll see how the future holds with that. Now, I have a few items here I'd like you to examine, see if you recognize any of them. All right?
Uh-huh.
You recognize that at all?
Yeah, that goes on the, I don't know what's There's one for the brake and one for the gas, electric. I think this is for electric.
That's the one for the electric.
I think so.
You may have actually used that. You know, you may actually have used that
I don't
very
remember
one.
the top here. Just a straight handle, and it was kind of round.
That one comes off one of the 600s.
I don't remember this here.
Yeah, I remember myself. Yeah.
Now that I can't remember that part, but I remember the shot handle, and it was for electricity
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Electricity.
That's a controller handle.
control, power.
See if you remember these things.
Oh yeah, there was when you went to Lincoln Park, you had two of them.
That's a rookie register.
Yeah, yeah. You know,
That one's it's jammed.
yeah. You go in there,
Car check
come out here,
and it
and
recorded.
if it didn't go through, you put it in your pocket.
Oh yeah? Oh, I didn't know that.
Most of the time, people put them through.
Right. Well, they were in the stand.
Yeah,
You shoved it in the stand,
Yeah.
right?
but once in a while, the inspector would get on, and he says, especially if you got late, he said, take the bus, take this and go down and pick up all the fares. So when you get to Lung's Corner, all they can do is get off. Well, of course, they would go in, they dump them out, and then put them in your pocket. So once in a while, they collect one in this fare, and then you reach over here and get this one. Well, sometimes you'd go in here, sometimes you wouldn't.
Oh, is that? Yeah.
It all depends on the.
Well, that's rather interesting. Now,
Then one time they put a list up on a board for different drivers come in and see the boss. Well, come to find out, they was doing it that way, and so you go to Fall River, on the Fall River line especially, they collect the fares, and then you got off and I got on. Well, I would always turn in $10, $15, or $20 more than you did,
oh yeah,
because you collected a little by hand.
that's true. Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, there was one day they were to put a list up on a board for 12 drivers to come and see the boss, and they got a lecture.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Well now, one might ask, what's left? Or where can we go to view artifacts from the trolleys of our home region? First, it's important to know that most of our local cars were burned and scrapped. This took place over many years by the Union Street Railway itself, out behind the Pope's Island car barn. At the end of service here, 7 of the 600 series cars went to the Queensboro Bridge Line in New York City. With the end of that operation, 6 of the 7 trolleys were scrapped, except for the Warbon car, number 601, which lasted until the year 2009, when it too was dismantled. A very few pieces of rolling stock, however, have survived and can be viewed in 2 trolley museums here in New England. RPO car, number 302, is at the Shoreline Trolley Museum in East Haven, Connecticut. RPO car number 34 and horse car Oxford number 10 are at the Seashore Trolley Museum in Kennebunkport, Maine, and sadly, those are all that have survived. 2 of the car barns remain. The main barn at the corner of Weld and Purchase Streets is now apartments. Also, the Pope's Island car barn has long ago been transformed into a group of stores. Every now and then, some artifact or another from the trolley era is found. Some such items are tickets, car checks, passes, camp badges, photos, hardware like this controller handle, or a car check register, or maybe even a copy or two of Trolleygrams, a publication of the Union Street Railway employees back in the 1920s. Perhaps the most we have are the photographs taken by trolley enthusiasts back when the cars were still in operation. There is still also an interesting 35mm film made by the Union Street Railway itself that survives. Let's take a brief look at a clip from it. Some of the footage takes place at the trolley waiting station, which later became Cherry's department store on the southeast corner of Purchase and William Streets. And so, now it is time to set aside this chapter in Dartmouth's history and simply appreciate the work and efforts of all those that provided the trolley service for the citizens of our town and area over many years, and in all kinds of weather also, right to the final days of our streetcar lines.